Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I had the great pleasure today of talking with my new friend, Mitchell Osmond from Dad Nation Co. So, Mitch has a great calling and heart for dads, for men in general, who are trying to level up, just trying to be a better dad, trying to be a better husband, just a better man in general. And we had a really good and long conversation. We got into a lot of stuff, got into some spicy stuff a little bit, but I really wanted to get you to listen to this, encourage you to listen to it, especially if you're a man, and be encouraged that, you know what, some of the things we're struggling with as men, they're maybe not as unique to you as you might think, and that there's always areas that we can level up in, and always areas that there is hope for us to grow in. All right. So without further ado, thank you so much for listening. Let's tune into the show. Hey, Mitch, thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate you being here. Would you mind introducing yourself to the audience, people who just might not know who you are? Just give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, well, hey, Adam, thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I just want to say I love your stuff. I love your mission. You were on my podcast a few weeks back, and we share a lot of the same convictions and a lot of the same passions. And so I love what you're doing, and it's an honor for me to be here on your show. So thanks for the invite. I'm happy to have this conversation with you. My name's Mitch, Mitchell Osmond, and I have a wife, a son, and I'm running this sorry, and I'm running this. Wow, I am just stumbling over my words. I'm running this Instagram channel called Dad Nation Co. And I recently just launched a bunch of different things like that with a podcast, like I just mentioned, and really the vision of Dad Nation is we just simply believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. And so a little bit of my personal story. I came from a dysfunctional home. My dad was an alcoholic, drug dealer, and I grew up. My mom was a faith-filled saint, and she was a prayer warrior, you know. And then my two older sisters, one was spent her most of her life in juvie homes, and then as a teenage life, and the other one went into the military. So completely different trajectories. And of course, baby boy Mitchell grew up in the middle of this very much divided home. And so I grew up in a very dysfunctional background or dysfunctional home. And so when it came to this idea of manhood, fatherhood, what it means to be a good man, what it means to be a great father, great husband, how to love and respect a woman. I really didn't understand what that meant and how to do that because it was never modeled for me. And so I grew up in the midst of that. And then as a result, you know, growing up as to be becoming a young man, I really floundered a lot and wrestled. And we got married. I was in a very unhappy marriage because of the fact of all those challenges that I was facing, some of the trauma from my childhood. And so I learned a lot of lessons the hardest way possible. And of course, I ended up getting involved in ministry. And of course, I'm a music pastor at a church here in Canada. And that's another thing that I do. But through ministry experience, through leadership experience, and through just walking with men just in my life, I just became more and more passionate about this idea of helping other men really kind of learn some of these things perhaps the easier way. And if I could help show men how to love their wives, how to show up on a whole new level for their kids, how to, you know, take care of their body, their mind, their soul, you know, all that kind of stuff, and helping men understand that health is holistic in the sense of, you know, it's not just one, but it's all of it. And what does it look like for a good man to lead his family well, to be a man of God, to be a man who loves his wife, to be a man who cherishes his wife, who shows up for his kids. And so I really more recently, I've been doing a lot over the past decade of just kind of doing it organically. And then a lot of people reaching out saying, hey, would you consider like coaching me? Would you consider, would you, you know, do you sell any courses? Do you have a podcast I can listen to? And so over the course of the past few years, I just kind of started listening to people and saying, well, maybe I should actually just perhaps formalize this a little bit. And so that's why I launched Dad Nation. And that's essentially what it is. It's helping. It's a community of men who are in the pursuit of greatness, and we just, like I said, to step up in their families and in their marriages, but also just in their personal life, right? Because like I said, I believe, we have one body, like you agree with this. We have one body. We have to take care of it well. We have to steward it well because it's a gift from the Lord. And so that's a little bit about where I come from and currently what I'm doing, and really what makes me tick. And so I'm real passionate, man, about being the best that we can be for a lot of different reasons, not just spiritually, but also just in a lot of other ways. So hopefully that wasn't too much, but that's a little bit about my background.
No, man, you did great, dude. Thank you for all of that. You've been married for how long? Can I ask?
No,
Can I ask this
9
question?
years,
9 years.
9 years.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've got a few on you, but it's mainly because I was born before you. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Hey, man, you know what? I got a lot to learn from you. And when people say to me, "Hey, what can you tell me?" I tell them, I can tell you what not to do. I may not tell you what to do because I made enough mistakes to know not
oh my
what not to
God.
do. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Look, the best lessons you ever learn are the ones you learn the hard way because they leave a
Mm-hmm.
mark. But okay, so you married 9 years. You got, I think you said you got one son, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So far.
and what was the biggest shock for you? Like when you first got married, you said it was rough, right? Which look, look, I'm just like, it's always rough, you
This is a
know,
war zone, bro.
dude. And nobody knows how to fight fair,
No.
right? So, what um, what was like the biggest shock for you that kind of started like maybe I don't know if it was like right away or what was the thing that started to wake you up to
Mm.
this need for you to level up in a sense? Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely, man. There was a turning point for sure. So the first 3 years were very difficult, and I'll explain sort of what happened. But we really got to a point where we hit rock bottom, and so what happened, and this happens to a lot of men, is we just were fighting and fighting and fighting, and I just became very apathetic. I kind of turned into a shell of a man. And if you know me, I'm very passionate. I've got a zeal for life, like, not many people. But dude, and what I now recognize was, a mild state of depression. I was like 40 pounds overweight. We were in debt to almost like six figures. And it was wild, dude. And so I remember having a conversation. My wife had asked me, we are having a conversation about having kids. And I'd said to her, we cannot bring a child into this relationship. And unless we figure this out, this is just not going to work. And I said to her that day, I was like, if we don't figure this out, this just will not work. And so coming from my perspective, for her to hear me say that, who is like loyalist, faithful to the end, I'm old school, I'm traditional, I don't believe in the word divorce. We never joked about it. And for
You're
me
a
to
trad
say
dad.
that was right. I'm a trad
Yeah.
dad through and through. And so for her to hear me say that, it just shocked her to her core. And so we started doing therapy, and it was that point, man, that I realized it's not just the marriage that's the problem here. I'm incredibly insecure. I'm not the man who I say I am. My front stage looks one way, my backstage looks another way, or another way of putting it, my insides don't match my outsides. I'm not living a life of authenticity. And so, man, I just got to work, and I spent a lot of time on prayer, and the Lord just revealed to me, you're not a trustworthy man in the things that I've entrusted you with. And so,
Oh,
and that yeah, man, that spilled into everything, my physical body, right, my finances, and my marriage, and that passage from Matthew, those will be trusted with much who can be trusted with little. He said, I want to trust you with more, but I need to know that I can trust you with what you have. And there was one point he just said, you dude, I was just not a good man. And I remember one time we got in a fight, and the Holy Spirit said to me in the moment after I yelled, walked away, he said, she is my daughter first, and she is your wife after. And so I can take her from you anytime I want. And so you need to start treating my daughter with more love and respect. And so for me, there was a few of those things right around. It was all about 1 month, man. And so I got a personal trainer, and I started studying I started studying nutrition, exercise. I started studying personal finance. I turned into a total head case for like 3 years, dude. Like closet, just geeking out on everything, macros, supplements, investments, savings, whatever, human behavioral sciences. And dude, over the course of 3 years, probably when it was all said and done, my entire marriage transformed. Of course, if you go on my Instagram, you can see a little transformation photo of my body. I transformed my body. We
Very much
paid
so.
off. Yeah, we
You
we
killed
paid
it.
off all of our debt within a year, and we just got serious, and got to a place of financial security, marital, security, and even just overflow. And I had a body that I could that was healthy and strong, and a mind that was clear and confident for the first time in my life. And so I understood, man, that I understood for the first time that this was all connected. And that was so it was 6 years ago. And so over the past 4 or 5 years is really when I got serious about how can I help other men understand this, and how can I break this down. And so, dude, I'm just such a believer in the fact that we set a tone in our families. I heard a phrase a little while ago that the man in the home should be the thermostat, not the thermometer. Meaning, we should not be moved, by the room, but we ought to set the temperature, set the emotional tone. We need to be the lowest heartbeat in the room. And dude, I just love that. And so I've taken that vision into now with my son. It's like when I come home, I'm like, how can I step up for my wife? How can I step up for my son? How can I be their rock? You know what I mean? And how can I live a life worthy of imitation, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? And so that was kind of the turning point for me. It just got to it's now or never, or this is done. And it was a crazy place to be in, especially in a place of ministry that I was in a very large church, very public position, right? And it was a wild time, bro. But that was the big turning point for me, for sure.
Dude, that's thanks for sharing that too, by the
Mhm.
way, for being vulnerable with it. But I'm interested in a couple of things.
Yeah.
Okay, most guys, and look, I'm a dad. I've been married 22 years. I've been going through my own junk for like the last decade, right? Like I see a counselor, like look, I'm in up to my eyeballs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I quit drinking. I had to quit drinking. Like there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you're saying like within a month it turned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which to me is miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
Like that timeline is miraculous because most dudes, it's years
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much fear behind what's required to change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you feel any of that? Did you feel any of that? Like, um, it's like you're weighing the pain of not changing with the pain of changing, right? Like, could I put
Mm-hmm.
up with this longer, or you know what I mean? Did you have any of that?
Absolutely, man. I mean, like I said, the environment that I came from, I had no idea what it even looked like to honor my wife and to be a good father and husband, and scared the crap out of me, dude. Um, because I didn't know what was possible, right? And we fear the unknown. It's just what is that quote by Virginia Satir? We're comfortable with the I don't know. I'll look it up and I'll let you know after. But basically, it's we would prefer to be in the unfamiliar, because that's what we know, right? Versus stepping into the unknown in the future and having no idea what it's going to look like. And so we'd rather be miserable in the moment because that's what we know, rather than go into the future and not know what it's about. And so for me, um, yeah, I think I heard this a little while ago. You don't get what you want, you get what you need. And they use the analogy of if somebody had a gun to your head and they said, you need to lose 30 pounds, or I'm going to pull the trigger. Well, you better believe that you would lose the 30 pounds, right? Because I need to lose 30 pounds. Right? If somebody put a gun to my head and said, you have to learn how to be a good husband, or I'm going to pull the trigger in a month. You better believe that I'm going to do everything I can, because I don't get what I want. I get what I need. And I think that's a lot of the situation that we find ourselves in as men, is we may want things, but it's never gotten to the point where we need it, where we don't have any other choice. And for me, it was like this matter of, this is a need. If I'm going to continue on like this, there, it just has to change, or this is over. And so it was just facing my fears, man. And good accountability too, right? Of course. And then prayer, obviously, all that stuff as well. But having good men around me that could speak into what was possible, because I couldn't see it for myself, but I could look around and see men who were doing it well. And so having them speaking into my life and saying, yeah, man, this is how we do it. This, and I can see this for you. And they painted the picture for me so that I could see it for myself. And that's another part of the reason why I started this community. It's because we need to come alongside of each other, and we need to surround ourselves with people who are doing things that we want to do, so that they can help us understand for ourselves. It's like that quote from Jim Rohn. You know, the combination of the top 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, if you spend time with people who are ahead of you, you can begin to see for yourself what life could look like. And so for me, man, yeah, it was prayer, but it was like a sheer place of desperation. And it was getting myself around men who could mentor me and who could help me see what life could look like for myself. And then just a matter of, it was just like okay, it's now or never. It's, or this is done. And so that's kind of what happened. And that's how I got it done. But yeah, sure, dude, it was scary. But the future and what was going to happen was even more scary. When you look at your wife and you see her heart break right in front of you for the first time, when you say, I don't think this is going to work, there's just something that shifts, and you're just like, it's now or never. So I don't know if
Dude,
that answers your question.
no, it does. It does. I'm always interested in people's processes,
Mm-hmm.
because, most of us need to kind of end up heading towards a very general direction of physical health, mental, emotional well-being, spiritual
Mm-hmm.
health. But I'm always interested in how people get on that track,
Mm,
and what steps it took, one, to push them over the edge, and then two, what were the processes they were going through mentally and emotionally that kept them moving forward or stalled them, right?
mm,
Because everybody's running into very similar obstacles. It just depends on what face it has or what name you give it. But
mm-hmm.
they're all very similar. Like for me in particular, there's just this fear of, there was just this fear of, people knowing who I really am. And if
Mm,
who I really am is better than this fake thing,
mm.
right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's like the devil is
Mm-hmm.
better than the devil you don't know. So,
Yeah.
what was the first step you took then? You hired a trainer. So talk to me. Let's go through that. That one's easy for me, right? That's. I'll talk about that for hours, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what did hiring a trainer do, and why did you start there? Do you think?
Mm. Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you what, I'll get to that, but I just want to jump back to that quote that I
Go
butchered earlier.
go for it.
Virginia Satir said this: people prefer the certainty of misery to the misery of uncertainty.
Mm,
So they would prefer the certainty of what they know rather than the misery of not knowing what's ahead. It's a powerful quote. And I think the fear of what is unknown keeps us trapped in the present. So what did I do? Yeah, I hired a trainer, and this guy was all about sustainability. He was all about the psychology behind food. And I had yo-yoed for years, and I had worked out. I mean, training wasn't a problem for me. It was where I was going after the gym, crushing, Whoppers and Big Macs and whatever. I had an emotional relationship with food that needed an overhaul. I needed to just break up with food, I guess, if you will. And so I was an emotional eater. I grew up in a culture that celebrated with food. And when life was good, we ate. When life was bad, we ate. When life was boring, we ate. And so, dude, he helped me really understand the psychological triggers And on our podcast episode, I had said that phrase, if it's in my house, it's in my mouth. That
Yep.
was what I got from him, because he was the same way. And he had helped me normalize that. And so he had said to me, hey, give me your diet and what you're already eating. And I'm going to modify what you're already eating to work with the plan rather than just cutting everything and just giving you all new stuff. He's like, I'm going to work with what you're already doing and make subtle tweaks. And he talked to me about seeing things like seeing carbs as, or seeing calories as currency, right? So he was
Mm.
like, hey, you got $2,500 slash calories to spend today. How are you going to spend those calories? Now, you could, like, so in the context of money, I could go out if I got $2,500 for, you know, the next couple of weeks. Okay, I could go out and spend $2,000 on a watch, but that's going to leave me with $500 for the rest of my living, you know? So it doesn't make sense to do that. So in the same sense of my calories, why would I go to McDonald's and blow it all on a quarter
Mm-hmm.
pounder with cheese and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I gotta spend this currency wisely. And so there's a few different things that he helped me understand, but for me, it was 100% the diet. And that's makes sense. And that's where I go when I talk to men too, because we know like at least 80% of your results come from your diet, right? So why would
Mm-hmm.
we, I mean, we always, at least I don't know in your experience with your clients, but we always major on the minors. And it's
Always.
like all about that.
Always.
What's that supplement, man? What's that
Mm.
creatine? Give me that pre-workout, you know, whatever, right? Or
Can I
the
have this drink over that drink? This one's got sucralose and this one's got aspartame. And you
yeah,
got, hey man, put the donuts down first and then we'll talk about the drinks. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Drop the burger and then let's talk about creatine or protein or
Yes,
whatever.
it's like,
Totally. And so for me, man, it was like I've been focusing on the 20% my entire life, and I've been ignoring that 80%, which is my nutrition, my diet. What would it look like to lock
mm-hmm,
down that 80%? And
mm-hmm,
okay, you know, if I get the 20%, great. Even if I get 10% of that 20%, but I nail the 80%, I'm going to see more results than I ever did. And honestly, it was an overhaul of my relationship with food. And it was this understanding that I couldn't use food as an emotional release. I had to start to see food as fuel, and that was a big shift for me. And he helped me understand the psychology behind food, and when I was eating, why I was eating, and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the stuff that I teach actually started with that guy,
mm-hmm.
because that was the first time I'd ever seen real results.
I love that. I think a lot of guys, first of all, well done because I saw your before and afters and, you know, you went from traditional dad bod to like freaking savage, you know, but like you looked happy though.
Yeah.
That was the thing about that thing about your picture was less about, oh, he's got abs and pecs now. It's more like you glowed a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like your spirit was there. You could see it. So
Yeah, and I said, you know, in that, I think I said in that caption, like, look at my face, like, look at my,
mm-hmm,
I was so insecure, I couldn't even look at the camera, you
mm-hmm,
know. But that wasn't just what was going on physically. It was that was the day after I had that conversation with my wife. So it was raw, it was real. And the next morning I got up, I took
mm-hmm.
my shirt off and I took a before photo. And I said, I'm done. Enough is enough. I'm all in, you know. And so that's why you see that genuine sorrow and like, you
Yeah,
know,
you're just like,
lament in my face. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And one thing I think is very interesting, and maybe we can, you know, we'll go down this rabbit hole a little bit, is that I think for guys a lot of times, and you could correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think for guys a lot of times we need a tangible, like, you know, like if I can put my hand to something, I'm gonna put my hand to something. Okay? If I can physically move right now to
Mm,
start bettering my circumstances, I'll probably choose something physical over kind of esoteric or in, you know, like mental head knowledge.
mm-hmm,
Rather than reading a book, I'm probably going to go do some work, right?
mm-hmm,
It just for some reason it feeds me better. And I find a lot of guys come to like this place of emotional maturity, spiritual maturity, but they come from a physical avenue,
mm,
right? It comes like it starts on a physical plane because I think guys are just more comfortable. Like I might doubt myself emotionally, spiritually, but I don't doubt what I can do physically.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
yeah, totally.
Is that how it is that kind of did it start there for you, or were you just like, I'm just gonna I'm checking all the freaking boxes, dude. Like I'm just going
Hmm.
down. I'm just throwing myself into the meat grinder, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Well, for me, the physical wasn't really working, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I just kind of had to look at a different approach. I couldn't stop. I just had to start doing something different because that definition of insanity or whatever is just continually doing the same things and expecting different results. And so for me, yeah, it was a holistic approach. But the mind is a powerful thing, man. And I started reading about our subconscious mind versus our conscious thoughts, and I started reading about emotional control, like management and all that kind of stuff. Like, for example, I think we talked about this in our episode, but just reading that 95% of the decisions we make every day are subconscious. And so
Wow.
I'm like, man, I'm 5% of the decisions I make, I'm actually thinking about. The rest of my life is on autopilot. And that's why that's why we as men oftentimes will live the same year over and over and over again, because we never actually sit down and do the deep work and observe our emotions and
Mm.
observe our actions. Right. And so understanding the power of the mind and like what you can actually do if you actually begin to do the deep work, right, and to do the processing it takes. Also, just our emotions as men. There's this term called normative male alexithymia, a psychological term that basically just means um, we as men have been programmed, if you will, not programmed, but through culture and through generations have said, whether it was our fathers and their fathers, for the most part, generally speaking, we've been taught, hey, suck it up, right? Men, real men don't cry, like stuff it down. That's not for right now. You can't talk about how sensitive you're feeling or how insecure you're feeling. And for the occasional guy who actually was comfortable saying that they're insecure or vulnerable, whatever the case is, no one else is talking about it. So even if there was an exception of a guy was comfortable saying it, he's in a room with dudes who are like, how about the game, man? But you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nobody's talking about it. And so for me, it was like this understanding and realization of like, oh, we actually are in a situation where we've been like generationally suppressing how we feel, and we're uncomfortable talking about our deepest fears. We're uncomfortable talking about our insecurities and our vulnerabilities. And you pair that with 90% of our lives being unquestioned and just happening like subconsciously. Well, no wonder we don't change as men,
Mhm.
because we don't think about what we're doing for the most part. We just continue to do everything we're doing subconsciously. And even if we did start to think about it, we're uncomfortable doing it because no other guys are doing it. And so that for me was like, I gotta get into the mindset stuff and start actually questioning why I think the way I think. Why is it that I would get mad at my wife when she whatever, like why is it that I'm afraid or fearful, like you had said, I think you had said, I'm afraid that people will find out that I'm not the man that I say I am,
Mhm.
or the imposter syndrome, right? It's like,
Mhm.
well, what if they find out, what if they find out that I'm actually insecure, or whatever. And I think when you come to grips with all this stuff, I think true strength, and dare I use the word masculinity, but true masculinity is someone who can be confident about speaking about how they're feeling, about how speaking about maybe where they're insecure and whatever. However, not being shaken by that. I'm not just saying be soft and weak, all that stuff, but the strength is in acknowledging those things and having the confidence to do so, but then continue to say, I'm gonna continue to work on this. I'm gonna continue to press on. I'm gonna show up for my family. But I do think it takes a certain level of confidence to speak like that. But I actually, in my experience, I have not ever seen change in a man until he has acknowledged what's going on in his mind
Mhm.
and in his heart.
Mhm.
And until you're able to do that, nothing really changes. And so, but that's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to do that. Most guys don't want to do that. Some
Mhm.
do, but that's a little bit about why we struggle as men, right? So, my advice would be dig into that, right? Your wife doesn't want to be married to a robot. I thought for years it's my job to be strong, to not talk about how I feel, to own it, to handle everything, and I'm not going to talk about what I'm struggling with. But one day around this time, I'd actually had the courage to say, I had a really hard day and I'm feeling kind of insecure about this thing. It was about I think it was the weight I had gained. And I'd never said that to her.
Mm.
And I just tried, dude, it took me so much courage to just say that I'm insecure about how I look with my shirt off. And probably a lot of men listening to this would, if they're honest with themselves, they would probably feel that way, but they may never say that. And I said it to her, and she was like, thank you so much for saying that, because it's felt for years like I've been married to a robot. And I feel so much closer to you knowing that you feel something, right? And I just feel like you just let down a wall that you had up with me. And that was the first crack, in this wall that was between us. And I had it completely backwards the whole time. I thought, no, to be a good husband, I've got to be impenetrable. I've got to be strong, tough. It was actually quite the complete opposite, where she began to feel more connected to me than ever when I started being honest about how I feel.
Right? Yeah, that's huge, man. Like, honestly, and there's so much to unpack there. I mean, I don't even know if we could unpack all of it, but I think there is this mystique that men, and a lot of us fall into it, especially guys who, and this is just me showing my age, doesn't matter. I'm Gen X, you know what I mean? Which apparently is the generation that never existed, because now they call me a boomer, and I'm like, okay, what? read a history book.
Dang,
you know what I mean?
bro.
Like, get off Instagram and read a book. You know what I mean? So, but I feel like that was kind of passed down, that showing vulnerability was a sign of weakness. Like admitting that I felt a certain way was admitting I'm weak. But I think as we've aged, we've learned that admitting I feel a way and being okay with it takes far more strength than acting as if I don't feel a way. Being an actor does not take a lot. You know what I mean? Turning off my emotions, that's easy. I can do that literally right now and just go walk around and like nothing's happened. But risking the rejection of my wife and saying, look, I'm really struggling with these thoughts, or I'm struggling with this view of myself, or this inadequacy that I feel, and just throwing those dice out there and hoping it doesn't come up snake eyes. You know what I mean? You're just, but I really feel that this is something that's missing for guys, because like you said, you've never seen a guy really change until he's come to that kind of desperation point. And it's similar to when you give your life to the Lord, right? A lot of guys never, like, they don't really admit they need to give their life to Jesus until something breaks them, right? And then when you're broken, then it's like, then you can feel God kind of hold you together, right? And I feel like there's so much to learn there in embracing masculinity. Being masculine is not being one-sided. It's being fully who you are in a masculine way, right? So let me ask you this. Did your wife surprise you when she answered that?
Blew my mind, bro. Like, because because of my upbringing, I just never thought that was the way a man should react, right? And respond or act. But one of my buddies, again, who I just looked around my life and I said, who has the most incredible marriage? And I'm going to just grab a coffee with them. I looked at and I said, who's the most jacked in my life? I'm going to go learn from them, right? Who's got the most money? I'm going to go talk with them. And I just started surrounding myself with men who had who were where I wanted to be. And so this guy, who had an incredible marriage, has an incredible marriage, said to me, have you ever been honest with your wife about how you feel? Not just like, I had a good day, I had a bad day, but have you ever actually shared your deepest fears with your wife? And so how could you ever expect to connect with her on an emotional level if you're not sharing your emotions with her? It doesn't make sense.
Or if
right?
you're not connected with yourself emotionally.
Exactly, right? And so I mean, one of for the most part, this is, not for everybody, but most wives, they're one of their most basic needs is the need for intimate conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Is simply to have conversation about how they're feeling, about emotions, about all that kind of stuff. But if we don't do that, there's a gigantic need we're not meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we must learn how to connect with our emotions, but be able to, and then listen to their emotions, but to be able to have that exchange and talk about our emotions. That's the key to connecting to our spouses. Dude, that concept was completely foreign to me for the first 3 years of my marriage, right?
Wow.
So, and when you think about it, right, like no wonder, like let's think about World War II, right? All this time ago, we had millions of men coming back from war with no help. They experienced extreme trauma, extreme
Mm-hmm.
PTSD. So these men are coming back after seeing death, destruction, and they're just medicating because there's no resources, there's no help. And so they're medicating with alcohol, drugs, whatever the case is, anger, abuse, and they have no tools to teach their children about how to process their emotions. So they're a product of their generation. So what do? They stuff it down, they medicate it. They raise children who they then teach, stuff it down, medicate, stuff it down, right?
That's
And
me.
then
I'm that generation.
exactly. And those men have children, which are living now, we're still living in the repercussions of that. And so we need to acknowledge some of these extreme trauma, some of the extreme trauma that are like 1 or 2 generations away from us. And
Mm-hmm.
so no wonder we're in a situation like this, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to take generations to catch up. But I think that's one thing that perhaps I think the Gen X's were beginning to recognize it. And I believe the millennials, which is my generation, are really kind of stepping into it. Sometimes I think maybe the Gen Zs are going a little too far on the on the pendulum. We'll find middle ground here somewhere, but yeah, man,
Look,
when you think about our history, no wonder we're feeling this way. But to answer your question in a really long way, yeah, man, I was super surprised by my wife responding that way to when I told her for the first time about my insecurities.
yeah, I would actually just say, caution, like tell guys, like, look, you need to share your emotions, but you need to be okay with whatever reaction you get to,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're sharing
Mm-hmm.
your emotions and you're expecting like great things, you might not get them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be aware, realize you're expressing this, one, for yourself, but then
Mm-hmm.
two, for the betterment of your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And your wife might actually need help getting there with you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if you're shifting the atmosphere and the rules of engagement with your a significant other, it sometimes it takes people time to catch up. Like I tell people, like, me and my wife were on like version like 3.0 of our marriage. Like
Mm-hmm.
we got married at 24, which was actually kind of old in my generation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People I knew were getting married at 19,
Mm-hmm.
right? Having babies. Like,
Yeah.
buddy of mine got married at 24. He had, I mean, he's got 5 kids, bro, and they're in college. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, dude, you're old. But it took us so many, times to try to figure out how to work with each other. And
Mm-hmm.
like you're both on a journey of healing and
Mm-hmm.
self-discovery and walking with the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it takes grace all the way around to deal with.
Years.
Yeah,
Yeah, years of grace. Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, man, in my experience, and three big things that were turning points that we learned, and I would encourage anybody listening to, whether they're a guy or a girl, woman or man, listen to this and they're married. um, Three things. The first thing was understanding our childhood relationships, and how they impact us. So, for example, the relationships with their mother or their father. So, my wife, her father was very emotional, very intuitive, very sensitive, and would sit with her and would sometimes cry with her if she had a hard day. Just very in tune, incredible man. But certainly like soft spoken. I came into the marriage like a bull in a china shop with no emotional awareness, no intuition. And so her model of what a man should speak like, act like, talk, how, he would lead a conversation even was completely, dude, it broke her brain because she's like, why aren't you sitting here with me, holding my hand and stroking my, hair and just being so sensitive? Why are you just giving me solutions to everything and trying to fix everything and like getting impatient, right? So, and it was so hard for us to see. And then, for example, for me, my mom was the same. She was acts of service all the way. She did everything for us, but she didn't ever really say she loved us. It was like one of those, I'll tell you I love you when you're born, and if it changes, I'll tell you. But that's just, and it wasn't verbal, it wasn't emotional. And so when I got married to her, she was emotional, she was sensitive, she was very much in the context of masculine and feminine. She was very feminine, and which is a beautiful thing, but I didn't understand it. And so we were going at it. So my model of what the feminine looked like, what a wife looked like, was my mom, which was completely different than my wife. And we do this all the time, and so it causes a real challenge. So number one, our relationships with our parents, and then how that affects our relationship with our spouses. Number two are core values. And so, for example, the first time we went to therapy, one of our therapists talked to us about this idea of discovering our core values, and we discovered that our values were completely different. So, for example, my values were like career, finance, all that, mission. Her values were relationships, family, things like that. So, for example, when we were first married, she's a healthcare professional. So there were a couple times she was a casual. She was a casual worker. So there was a couple times where she actually passed up shifts to spend time with a girlfriend who needed to spend time with her or whatever. And so I'm working 3 part-time jobs. She's full-time student working casual. So she's passing up shifts because she wants to spend time with her girlfriend. And I'm like, I'm working my butt off here, and we're just scraping by. And you're passing up shifts to hang with girls, but understanding my core values of like, security, career. It just fried my brain to understand why she would do that. However, looking at the situation from her perspective, where she just has such a high value on relationships and family and that connection, which is equally as important, I just didn't understand it. And so when we began to understand our core values, you're like, oh, well, no wonder you made that decision, right? Or no wonder you were upset when I said this, right? So understanding your core values was 2. Number 3 was love languages. And I'm sure you know all about this, but and if you don't, just DM me and I'll give you a ton of resources.
I read it when it came out, so it's been a hot minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I got tons of resources on it. I actually did an episode on it a little while ago, but love languages is such a critical component, and our love languages were totally different. So her love languages are quality time and physical touch. My love languages were acts of service and words of affirmation. And so we naturally love people how we want to be loved. And so I was trying to love her by doing things for her, making dinner, complimenting her, all that stuff, because those are my 2 love languages. She was trying to love me by like touching me and just hanging around, but I didn't need that. I wanted her to just help me with something, or just tell me I'm good looking, And so we were actually just loving each other in a really inefficient way. Sorry. And we weren't interpreting how we were loving each other very well. It's like, finances, we're always looking, how can you get the biggest bang for your buck? How can you get that biggest return on investment? And it was like, well, how can I get the biggest return on my love investment, if you will? Well, the best way to do that is to love her in a way that she understands and can receive.
In a currency that she understands.
Currency. Yeah. And currency she understands. So, okay. If her love language is quality time and physical touch, there's no point in me making her dinner, going out buying her flowers. That doesn't mean jack all to her, but rubbing her back and putting my phone down and having a conversation with her face to face means the world. And so understanding and not just understanding, but living out those love languages were were huge. So those three things: understanding our relationships with our parents and how they affect our relationship with our spouses, understanding our core values, and understanding our love languages. That was like a trifecta that was like, oh, it just helped our conflict make so much sense.
What's really interesting there is all the three things you listed, none of those things are external.
None of
None
them.
of those things was like, I wish she would just get me. I wish she would just do this, or I need to do that. It's very much figuring out what the heck's going on between your ears, what you're
Mm-hmm.
expecting to see, and how you receive information from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because if how you receive the information is completely distorted, you're not getting the message, man. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got interference going on. So,
Mm-hmm.
like for my wife, it took us a long time to figure this out, but she's physical touch and like gift giving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if there's a birthday, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
like it's like 27 presents,
Mm-hmm.
it's like her birthday.
Yeah.
But for me,
Yeah.
it's definitely acts of service and like quality time.
Mm.
Like I cook all the meals in the house, mainly because I like to eat, and you know, and Kim's like, I could burn water. So,
Yeah.
um, but also like I just for me, quality just hanging out, dude. Like just
Mm-hmm.
being around me. Like
Mm-hmm.
earlier, she was taking a break from work, and I just said, "Hey, will you come sit out here?" And she was
Mm.
like, "Sure." Just
Yeah.
like just come, just be in the room while I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what really happens. So, if you want
Yeah.
if you want to start figuring out how to, you know, have a better relationship, one, you have to start figuring out how do you relate,
Mm-hmm.
and then starting to figure out how can we make this compatible together? How can we make sure we're sending the right information? The Love Languages is such a great book.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a low barrier. Like
Totally.
it's such a low barrier. Like, oh wait, so you just want me to rub your back and
Mm-hmm.
like bring you flowers from time to time? Done. Like
Mm-hmm.
done. I mean, this is so easy. You know, she
Oh,
doesn't want to
yeah.
sit and talk about her feelings. She doesn't
Yeah.
want any none of that stuff that's like uncomfortable for most guys. Like,
Yeah.
she's not gonna sit. She we also figured this out in round 3 of our marriage, is that
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually the emotional one.
Mm. Yeah.
She's not.
Yeah. That
So
happens
now I'm
often.
like in touch with how I feel, and I'm like, why are you being a robot? Like,
Mm.
what's wrong with you? Am I broken? What's going
Mm-hmm.
on here?
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious. So we've switched places. I was the
Yeah.
robot for the first, 15 years of our marriage. But
Yeah, it's such a good framework, certainly to use it. And so there's a couple other things that Sam and I do. Number one, and this will help men who are fixers. A lot of times, when Sam is talking to me about her day or something she's frustrated by, I'll just ask her, "Hey, is this a conversation where you want me to help you fix it, or is this a conversation where you just want me to listen?" And I just set
super
the
smart.
intention right away, and then she's like, "You know what? I just want you to listen." I'm like, all right, pressure's off. I'm just going to sit here and listen. Right. I don't get it. I'm just going to sit here and listen. There's a YouTube video called "It's Not About the Nail." And if you just go to YouTube and type in "It's Not About the Nail," it's a perfect explanation of how men just are so programmed to like fix everything. Um, and so that framework really helps. And then if she says, actually, I'd love for you to help me get a solution to this problem, I'm like, all right, let's go, because that's how I'm wired. The second thing and I think you said something about interpretation of words or different things, understanding one another. I think it was Brene Brown who was talking about this a while ago. It's just called "The Story I'm Telling Myself." So basically, the way it works is if because often what happens is when you say something, you may mean something, but your wife will often hear something totally different. She'll interpret in a different way, and that's always going to happen because she's on the other side of the words and she's interpreting it from a different brain than yours. So it's going to be interpreted in a different way. It's the same way that scripture can be interpreted in so many different ways. And so what we've used is so, for example, if she says something to me like, "You're working too much, why don't you spend more time with us?" Instead of me being like, "I can't believe she doesn't respect me, she doesn't understand how hard I'm working," what I've learned to do is think about it and say, "Okay, so Sam, when you say that, the story I'm telling myself is that you don't, I feel like maybe you don't appreciate how hard I'm working for my family, or maybe, you feel like I'm not showing up in the right way or whatever. And then she'll say, oh, well, that's not what I meant at all. What I meant is I just want to spend more time with you, you know? And so we've used that framework to say, if there's ever a point where we feel like, oh, I'm triggered by this, or I'm upset by what they said, perhaps that I may have misunderstood this. We start the response with, the story I'm telling myself when I hear you say that is dot dot dot.
That's
And
great.
that it helps us process it. And then it tells them verbatim how I've interpreted it. And then they can be, and 99% of the time they're like, oh, I didn't mean that at all. This
Mhm.
is what I meant. Right. And so
Great.
it helps bring clarity where in past experiences there was just confusion and misinterpretation.
I love that. Because I mean, I honestly, man, of everything that we're talking about, I mean, this is gold. I mean, there's so many guys are so many of us are struggling with these areas in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the directions that the conversation's going. I like
Mm-hmm.
that we need to turn inward and we need to look at us. Like none of the things you deal with are ever going to be fixed by looking out. They're always going to be fixed by looking in,
Mm-hmm.
because the problems are not always is not usually other people. Usually you're your problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? At least that's my in my case, right? I'm always my
Yep.
biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then the other thing is just learning to communicate well, like over communicate to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
with your wife, because I mean, especially if your wife loves you and she's been married to you for more than like a day, chances are she's kind. Chances
Mm-hmm.
are she's not trying to tick you off, and
Mm-hmm.
just like not really trying to just blow up the house today.
Yeah.
So like the benefit of the doubt really goes a long way, right? So it's interesting, like you said, if she says, hey, I'd like, you're working too much, would you, come out here? You said, like, you would probably take that like, you don't appreciate how much I'm working.
Exactly. Yeah.
I personally, this is how people are different. I would take that as you're not being a very good dad,
Yeah. That's another way. Yeah. Certainly.
right? Like I would take that like you're failing over here, so come deal with this, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Kim, it would, that first of all, that would crush me. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
thought that, if I thought that's what she thought, oh my God, it would just crush me, man. I'd just be like, just I'm gonna turn up a bottle of whiskey real quick. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna go dramatic real fast. Um, but I
Because
have
you're a
learned,
feeler.
like, if Kim and I don't ever I never say it in those terms, like the story I'm telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell her, like, when you say that, this is what I hear.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Same thing.
hear you saying I'm failing over here. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're killing it over here. We just you're just working more than normal and we miss you.
Mm-hmm.
We just miss you. And they're like, oh, well, missing you, that's kind of sweet. That's kind of nice. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason to be punching holes in the wall over that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Or whatever, however you
Yeah.
express your anger. Um, but man, we have just so much to learn about communication. What's so funny is I listen to Jordan Peterson quite a bit. I try not to get onto his political stuff too much because he just fires me up way too much, and I get mad with him,
Good. Yeah.
like because when he gets mad, he gets
Mm-hmm.
mad, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things he was talking about, he did a podcast with Derek from More Plates, More Dates. You know that guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
so he did that one, and he talked about a lot of that was about picking up girls and stuff like that. It's just whatever, and that's like part of the whole culture now, like in social media.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things he said was, and it just stuck out to me, he goes, if you could just learn to communicate when you're younger, you're going to have a less problems with people of the opposite sex. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, most 13-year-olds, I mean, they're idiots. Like they're idiots.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to talk, but they're just picking up weights and hoping a girl's notice that they're picking up weights. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, look, he's like, the way he put it, he goes, look, artists and musicians are doing pretty good for themselves and they don't look very masculine.
Yeah.
He says,
Yeah.
but they know how to work words and they're doing
Yeah.
pretty good for themselves.
That's
And
good.
I was
Yeah.
like, there's a real big point in there, is that I feel like sometimes as guys, We want to show that we're capable, maybe through our physical prowess or whatever. But I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if we could learn to show that we're capable in our communication, being vulnerable with our words, vulnerable where we are, how we feel, how something made me feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you could become kind of a ninja with words to some extent, you're going to go a lot farther. You're going to go further than the person who refuses to learn that skill set,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the stuff you're going to run into in your marriage is going to be miscommunication. It's literally, it's going to be value misalignment, and it's going to be miscommunication. Can you
100%.
agree?
100%. Well, and you think about it, right? So the masculine versus the feminine, very, very different. And now, when men and women all have different, varying degrees of masculinity and femininity and all that kind of stuff. So you can get men who are a little bit more feminine and then other. You can get women who are more masculine,
Mm-hmm.
certainly. But the point is that the masculine will always be confused by the feminine. And let me explain. So when you think about and when I'm talking about cores here, like down to its core, like the masculine nature is mission driven, very purpose driven. It's results oriented. It's it's a little more assertive, all that kind of stuff. The feminine is intuitive, it's emotional, it's driven by feelings, and like I said, intuition. But so and the way that that's played out, you think about it, there's a reason why a lot of the times men are drawn to action films, fighting films, guns, or the football, the Super Bowl party, because there's like purpose. There's purpose, there's strong, uh, there's mission, all that kind of stuff. There's assertiveness, but yet women are drawn to the rom-coms. It's a little more intuitive, it's a little more sensitive, it's a little more emotional, less logical. And again, it's not a bad thing. So we are wired. If we're a man who has any shred of masculinity and a woman who has a shred of feminine qualities, then in our very nature, we just perplex each other because we're ultimately driven by different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of why we get in this situation, especially as men, why we have a difficult time connecting with our wives, aka the feminine, because we're so perplexed by it, because we're always looking for accomplishments, purpose,
Mm-hmm.
mission, all that stuff, where they're like, no, just connect with me on an emotional level, talk with me, share your words with me, share your feelings with me. And so we see this played out right at the Super Bowl party. The guys are in the room watching TV, the girls are in the kitchen making snacks, hanging out, all that kind of stuff. And again, I say that with the caveat, I'm generalizing here, right? Of course,
We
not
know you're
everybody's like that.
generalizing, bro.
Yeah,
Nobody's
yeah,
writing an email right now, a strongly worded email.
but even for men, so like I had a guy talking to me a little while ago and was like, I finally got the courage to like to make a move on my wife, and she just like shoved me off. He put a
Make a
move
move,
on
you
her in
mean
the kitchen.
sexually?
Yeah,
Okay.
like the kitchen or something, like grabbed her or something. And I'd said, well, where how did you tell me about the process that you went through to decide
I'm so
how
glad
and
we're going here, man. I'm so glad. We
I said,
messed
tell me
this
about the
up
process,
so bad, dude. Guys just
bro,
totally botched this.
bro. And
You
listen,
watch too many dirty movies. That's the
right?
problem. That's
You got it all wrong. So I'd say, what was your process in coming to your decision on when and how and where to touch your wife, right? Tell me about that. Because remember, guys, we're logical, systems oriented, all that kind of stuff. We got to think through process, right? Got to make sense. And he's like, well, I didn't. I just grabbed her, right? So I'm like, okay, let's unpack that, right?
all right, Grok.
So maybe if you want to know where to touch your wife, when to touch your wife, how to touch your wife, maybe you should just ask her, right? Like she's the
Who
best coach.
knew?
Who knew that you could just ask your wife, hey, what do you want this to look like? But we don't, right? Because the words, the emotions, we're too insecure. And we don't want to say, I don't know when and where and how to touch you. And it makes us uncomfortable to say that we don't know how and when. And so
Mm-hmm.
we just, and you just grab her. You know what I mean? Because we don't have the courage or the confidence to actually just have that conversation
Mm-hmm.
and say, could you tell me, could you coach me how to love you physically this way? And we don't do it. No, I know so few men who have open, honest dialogue about
Yep.
physical intimacy with their wives.
Yep.
And so and then when I say it like this, it sounds so basic. Well, just ask her, you know? And that was another thing. It's like, well, and again, the masculine versus feminine. This is a way that these masculine men are perplexed and they just keep making stabs at something and it's not working, but we don't necessarily understand how to go about it. And it's like, well, the wife is just like, well, if you would just ask me, use your words.
Yeah.
Right?
When in doubt, ask a question, man. Like
100%.
Like how many times, like, I'll be honest, getting rejected physically by your wife hurts.
Totally.
Like, that junk freaking hurts.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't cry foul when when you walked up and molested her.
Mm-hmm.
Like she had no idea she's
Yep.
washing the dishes, bro. And you just
Yep.
grabbing a handful of whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, that would startle me. Like if I'm washing the dishes and somebody just grabbed my junk, I'd be like, what the crap? Actually, I'm throwing left hook, right straight. You know what I mean? Like I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys, this is actually, I love this topic because I think it is so not talked about. Like I've not heard one podcast, especially amongst Christians, that talk this way, where it's like, dude, if you want to have a good marriage, like let's just say you want to have a good sexual relationship with your wife, ask questions, ask them what they like. Don't assume the stuff you watched when that you repented of already. Like that is the playbook. That ain't the playbook, right? That's not. That's how you treat somebody like an object. And if she's your wife, you don't do that. You ask questions. What do you prefer? How would you like to be approached? Like
Absolutely.
like I've had to grow in this quite a bit. And I'll like just sometimes I'll just be like, look, I'm nervous. Like I want to be with you, but I'm kind of nervous. She's like, well, why are you nervous? Like we talk about, well, why are you nervous? Well, I'm not sure. And then it's like, oh, okay, all that just went away because I'm not like she diffused it completely, or
100%.
vice versa. Like she's like, I don't know, I'm just feeling insecure. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't need to. Let me take the lead or whatever. Like, but it's that communication. It can't just be, let's steam up the windows and, smoke a cigarette afterwards and everything's okay. Nothing happened there except intercourse. Right? There was no connection. So I think there's a lot to be learned on just how to communicate and ask questions, like, and be okay with whatever the answer is. You might have been doing it wrong this whole time, bro. Like, be okay with that. It's okay.
And she doesn't want to tell you. That's the thing. You got your like 3 moves you've been using for the past 9 years, but she don't want to be the one to tell you that you don't got
for 3 minutes. That's just be real, bro. You got to learn how to stretch this thing out. Like,
but she's not going to be the one who's like, yeah, you're not doing it in the bedroom. Yeah, she's not going to want to say that.
Look, and one, she's not going to want to say it. 2, she keeps going in bedroom with you. Right? And being unfulfilled. That says more about her wanting you than it does about how bad you are in the room, right? So take that as a win, bro. She's still here. And you've been hitting singles for a while. I'm sorry. I like to make jokes, but
I love it.
It's true though. It's so true. You could ask, like, let me just be clear. Most women, because their husband does not ask, most women, I would put money on it, are not sexually satisfied in their marriage.
Yeah, I think that's statistically accurate. Yeah, certainly. Again, because they don't talk about it. And again, it's not all men. I want to say that.
No.
But in my context, of course, I speak a lot with men, so that's the way I frame a lot of things. But of course, women are, it's not comfortable to talk about these things.
Not.
But the best thing you can do is to say, hey, what do you want to do in the bedroom? Limits off, blue sky, whatever. Have the conversation. And then talk about it and make a list, man. Make a top 10 list. These are the top 10 things we're going to try over the next 6 months. Honestly, bro, it's
I love that list, dude.
Yeah,
that list will change your life, bro.
Because also it'll create anticipation and give you something to get excited about. which is not a bad thing as well. And so, and it'll take you out of the box, and it'll increase communication both inside the bedroom and outside the bedroom.
Mhm.
It'll teach you to be more vulnerable and open and honest with each
Absolutely.
other. And of course, increase your physical intimacy life, which will increase your emotional intimacy and draw you both closer together. Right.
I
So,
love it, man. I tell
mhm.
like this. I say this jokingly, but I mean it in some ways. It's like if you don't feel a little dirty after, you didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, man.
Like I know I'm saying it jokingly, and I know it's supposed to kind of rib you, but I'm serious. Like there's freedom there, and
100%.
if you can walk in freedom to both express yourselves in ways that are not demeaning to the other in any
Hmm.
way, and you really
Hmm.
just love being with each other, dude, that will change the other, 24 hours or 23 hours of your day.
Hmm.
It'll because you're connected on such a deeper level now, and it's not just, and I'm not making a pun joke there, you're connected on such an emotionally trusting level because it's such a vulnerable position and act that, dude, I'm telling you, like I can't, I truly, like I'm surprised guys like aren't learning this. I'm surprised
Hmm.
there's not a course on this. Maybe there is that I don't know about. I had to learn the hard way,
Hmm.
like just
Yeah. Well, it
going
ain't
weeks
happening.
without intercourse.
It ain't happening in the church, unfortunately.
No,
And so, when you think about it, I mean, I think purity culture did a little bit of damage too,
you think?
to us.
You think, dude? What? I
Oh
married
man,
Jesus. What, you did what?
right? But I think, I equate great sex to having a really incredible conversation with my
Mm,
wife. I feel a very similar way
mm,
after both. And I believe that that's why the Lord created it for us. And again, it's not, it's always spoken about in the context of unity, bringing you become one in flesh, one in spirit, and so the purpose of sex is not some, animal, instinct crazy porn film kind of.
yeah,
It's a way to get together with your wife and be drawn together in unity. And it's something that has been ordained and blessed and
agreed.
created by the Lord.
Hmm.
And so if this is a gift that he's given you, why not go all in and do the best that to be the best that you can at it,
Dude,
whatever, right? So, and just like we had said in the conversation we had out of my podcast, it's like, if we believe that every good and perfect gift is from above, then everything comes from the Lord. And so we ought to be great stewards. I mean, Romans 16:19, he calls us to be excellent in what is good and be innocent of evil. Like he's everything we have, he's entrusted with us. Just like the conversation I had said when the Holy Spirit said to me, she's my daughter first before she's your wife.
hmm,
And steward this relationship well, because I can take her away whenever I want. Or my body is a gift from the Lord, or the sex between you and your wife is a gift from the Lord. And so, how am I being a faithful steward in it, and not just, like just doing well with what He's been giving me and honoring that gift, not just making it lame and the same old and boring and whatever, right?
hmm.
So, I'm a huge advocate, man, for open conversations, specifically around intimacy, because I agree we don't talk about it enough inside or outside the church.
Yeah, at all. It's so tabooed, and I don't. I mean, I guess I understand to some extent why.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of a can of worms to open that. Once that's open, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
The conversation tends to go so many directions that maybe it can't be controlled. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of it, but I do think that there'd be a lot fewer divorces if um, people were able to connect in a communicative way, on an
Mm-hmm.
emotional level, on
Mm-hmm.
a needs level, like these are my needs,
Mm-hmm.
and on an intimacy level where it's like, this is how I would prefer you to show intimacy to me, and this is, and vice versa, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
these are things that make me feel good when
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. I think if we could just get to the place where that's no longer shameful, like there's like a sense of shame that comes with that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. Like, I mean, dude, for the first 15 years of my marriage, after intimacy, I felt shame.
Hmm.
I felt ashamed because
Mm.
it's the one thing that goes from being a sin to like not being a sin, like within moments.
Mm-hmm.
And ain't nobody talking to you about it. Ain't nobody. The only thing people are saying is don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they're saying. They're saying, keep it in your pants, and better, there better be enough room between you and her, like for the Holy Spirit to fit, or
Get a
whatever people are
Bible.
saying.
Get a Bible in there.
Exactly. You're like, well, but I mean, yeah, the whole shame piece of that. And then finally, whenever we did start communicating around it, I was like, dude, there's no reason. Why am I feeling this way? This is, I really like you. Like, I like
Mm-hmm.
you. So I want
Yeah.
to be with you. So I just, man, God, I think it's just so underrated, that communication piece, asking questions and risking the rejection, right? The,
Mm-hmm.
the fear of rejection will stop most guys from communicating what they need, or
Mm-hmm.
being vulnerable. But I think that risk is much greater. That risk is much less than the risk of never connecting with the person you're supposed to be connected with, that
Mm-hmm.
you agreed to be with forever, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
just
Totally. Well, and I think the Lord's created us, differently to really force us to lean and put our dependency on Him, because we're wired so differently. We at some point we just kind of gotta, for me, in that breaking point in our marriage, I just ran to the Father and I was like, God, I can't figure this out on my own. Of course, it's the challenges that ultimately draw us closer to Him, and it's a beautiful thing about marriage, but it also just makes us better. But you think about it, right? So men, in how we experience, let's talk about the physical versus the emotional. Women, like, emotional intimacy, prepares them for physical intimacy. The emotional leads to the physical. You have great conversation, you
mhm,
connect on a deep level emotionally, then your wife is more prepared to be physically intimate. Men are the complete opposite. It's you don't need emotional connection to become physical. In fact, you are physical first, and when it's all over, post sex, then you start feeling those feelings flood in, and
mhm,
the pillow talk, like you can have a conversation with your wife about how you're feeling right after sex, right?
mhm,
And so it's with men, it's the physical leads to the emotional, but with women, it's the emotional that leads to the physical. And so we're both coming at it from completely different perspectives or starting points.
mhm,
And there's another way that we kind of confuse each other and get it a little bit wrong, right? So it just requires an intense amount of intentionality and communication. However, when you have the right tools, it gets easier. And of course, over time, like you said, if you're married 19, 20 years, it gets easier. It
yeah,
still doesn't end up not being, still is work. But my first 3 years were infinitely harder than the last 3 years, right?
yes,
Because we have tools that we've sharpened in our toolbox. We've
mhm,
got systems that we can use. We've got frameworks that we can use, right?
yep. And I
So,
think, there's also people, guys need to realize too. Most, and this is not my area of expertise, other than having been married for a long time, is that most women are not going to be the aggressor in a
mhm,
sexual situation.
totally.
Like my my wife and I, like my wife is like, more, I would say she's the more assertive personality in our
Mhm,
relationship. I am definitely more aggressive just because I'm a man, but I'm more of a feeler. I feel the room more than she does. Like, I feel the vibe of the room.
mhm,
Um, but like sometimes, we're on the way to bed and I'm like, she was like, you know, I had some plans tonight, and I was like, girl, you need to speak up. I do not speak hint. Like, hint
mhm,
is not in my vocabulary. I don't,
mhm,
you know, but I think we have to realize too that in the relationship, women are the gatekeeper of sexual intercourse. They're the gatekeeper, right?
mhm,
Dudes, literally, you could just turn the light on. I could be asleep. I
mhm,
could be asleep, and you could walk in. I see you change. Boop, launch sequence, 3 2 1, let's go. Right, it does
mhm,
not matter. There needs to be no
mhm.
priming the pump, nothing. So, you know what I mean, there's nothing,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
I think what I'm trying to say is for guys, even though this is uncomfortable, this is a skill you must learn, because most ladies are not going to be the aggressor in an
Mhm,
intimate situation. They're going to want you to take the lead on that to some extent. And you have to be gentle, and you have to be communicative, and you have to be able to step into that feeling world first
mhm,
before the physical world has its place, right? So,
100%. It starts in the morning,
dude,
the
all day,
earlier
text
in the day,
messages.
text messages, conversations, like passing touches,
Oh God,
whatever. Another interesting thing that I didn't learn until a couple of years ago, and because this is another, now that we're well in this whole rabbit hole.
I love this. Is like one of my favorite conversations so far. It's the best.
It's important to have the conversation with your spouse about whether you are more sexually dominant or submissive,
Mm,
right? Let
hmm.
me explain. A lot of men, for example, and counter to what you may think, a lot of men who are in positions of leadership, who have to be assertive, have to make decisions, who lead many people, have many direct reports, actually come home and in the bedroom prefer to be more submissive
Hmm.
because they have been so dominant
Hmm.
in their career all day.
I ain't trying to
It's
make no decisions right now.
exactly, and it's like the mechanic who comes home, his car is busted up. He's not working on his car after a 10-hour day working on everybody else's junk, right? So and then we often think of women as being submissive, or some men would think that, well, they would be submissive in the bedroom. It's not the case.
Mm.
And so it's important to have a conversation with your spouse when you fantasize about sex with me. Do you picture yourself being dominant or more submissive? Do you picture
Mhm.
yourself
Good one.
taking control or having someone take control, and having the confidence and the security to say, yeah, actually, this is what I would prefer.
Hmm.
As a man, it may be hard for you to say I'd prefer to be submissive, or as a woman, it might feel weird to say I'd prefer to dominate, in the bedroom. But it's another distinction that's important to have that conversation,
Very.
because if you have two people who are incredibly submissive in the bedroom, I mean, you're missing
Ain't
out on
nothing
a real
happening.
exactly. Or you got two people who are incredibly dominant. Like, you gotta have to understand in that ebb and flow. Then there might be different seasons where you're feeling a little bit more dominant or submissive, and so have that open conversation with your wife too about, like, well, what does this look like for us in the bedroom, right? And I'm just saying it's not always what you might think it would
A
be,
hundred
right?
percent. 100%. I like for my wife and and I don't think. I mean, I don't think she would care me talking about this, but like it's in the moment. We talk about it in the moment.
Hmm.
Like sometimes I'll be like, "Will you just be in charge?
Hmm.
Like just be in charge." And other times she's like, "You know what? Just take over. I
Hmm.
trust you." And it's like that to me is so freeing
Hmm.
because it's like it's it's the ultimate sign of trust in my mind. It's like I completely trust you to do whatever because I know your heart. I know why you're here.
Hmm.
I know you're not here just to feel some type of way or get your rocks off or whatever. But we talk about it in the moment because
Hmm.
it could change. And it could change in the time span of
Hmm.
the moment too. So
Hmm.
that's why I think the communication has to be there, man. If you're not, then somebody's usually missing the point or
Hmm.
missing a cue here and there. And it's not going to be as good as possibly it could be. And that's always a shame because it takes so much work to get to those points a lot of times. Um, you don't want to miss them if you can help it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm advocate that you should walk out of the bedroom with no questions. Meaning there should be nothing left up to question of, like, who should do what, or who likes doing what. Have the
Mm-hmm.
conversation in the moment. Ask the
Mm-hmm.
question, because it's so liberating. And us as men, I can't speak to women, but I know, because I only know the mind of a man. It's so common to be like, does she like this? Is she into this? Is this, you know what I mean? Is this working? And then you can get stuck in your head this whole time too, and you're thinking, like, why worry about all that? The insecurity. Just ask the questions, have the conversation, or even post. After, when it's all over, you get some pillow talk. But let's debrief. It doesn't sound sexy to say, but let's debrief it, right? Like,
You
let's
write
have
your
that
notes, I'll
conversation,
write my notes.
right? Let's exchange notes, but walk out knowing full well, like, what went really well, and have the
I
conversation,
love this.
right?
I love this conversation. One, because it's fun to talk about this stuff. Two, because the big theme I pick up from you, and this is a theme of my life, is that, and I don't know if you would put it this way, but the big theme I'm picking up from you is that I'm here to learn,
Mhm,
and I'm not afraid of learning. I'm not afraid of looking dumb or looking like I don't know, because I don't freaking know.
mhm,
Like nobody sat me, like I never had the conversation. I never had the birds and the bees conversation. Nobody ever had that with me. I learned it in everything I learned from junior high from a bunch of morons whose
mhm,
brothers taught them stuff from dirty magazines, right? Like, I mean, I literally didn't know my head from like a hole in the ground. Like it just,
mhm.
I had no idea. Nobody talked to me about it. My dad, my mom, nobody ever talked to me. And then you go to church, you give your life to the Lord, and they're just telling you it's bad. Come to find
Yeah.
out, it's really good.
Mhm,
You know what I mean? And then it's like everything I learned was wrong. But I think that one thing I'm picking up, and I think this applies very much to physical intimacy, is bro, it is a skill set.
mhm,
It's a skill, not for you to have prowess in the bed for a lot of people. You don't need to be a sexual machine. What you
mhm,
need to be is you need to have the skills to connect with your spouse exactly how they want to connect and makes them feel the most fulfilled and you the most fulfilled at the same time.
mhm.
It is a skill and it takes time. It takes a lot of questions. It takes a lot of messing things up, and like, sorry, we missed it on that one or
Mhm,
whatever. But as you continue to learn, dude, they can just get better, you
mhm.
know? Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And going back to the beginning of the conversation, that's what a confident masculine man is a
Mm-hmm.
man
Thank you
who's
for bringing that back.
comfortable, yeah, who's comfortable to talk about, their insecurities and questions and vulnerabilities, and is comfortable asking their wife these questions. Do you like this? Do you like that? And but can still be confident in who they are, and their identity isn't shaken because they don't know exactly, or their identity isn't shaken just because they're feeling a certain way. It's this sense of being grounded and secure. And so yeah, man, it's this is why it's hard, I think, for a lot, not just
It is.
husbands but wives as well. And so you're right, that's kind of what it all comes down to, man, is having the courage to have those conversations, to be vulnerable, to have that dialogue. And it takes skills, and then the love languages, the core values, the conversational frameworks, these are all skills that you develop over time,
Mhm.
um, in order to be the best spouse that you can be for your wife and your
Agreed.
family. And I think for me, like I said, I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but I say this in every podcast episode for Dad Nation. It's like I believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins.
Agreed.
And so your entire family is positively impacted when you can gain skills this way. And not just for your wife and for your marriage, but for your kids, because they see a beautiful marriage. They see a father who's honoring the mother. They see a man who's cherishing his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And your son, you're teaching your son to be the husband that he's going to be one day. Who you are as a man today is who your son will become when he's your age,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're listening, and you have a daughter and you're a woman, the daughter you have will become the woman that you are right now. And so think about your actions, think about how you're loving your spouse, think about how you're honoring each other, because you're modeling the marriage that they will one day have.
Agreed.
So yeah,
Agreed.
man.
Man, this is really good stuff, man. I want to jump in with some of this thought around doing the work. Okay. And I think we'll kind of start tapering off here, but there's a scripture and this is what I feel like the Lord spoke to me is I think it's in First Chronicles 28 where like nobody quotes Chronicles, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Respect, man.
Respect. I'm gonna do it in the King James too. Just kidding. Uh, but it's where David is told by God that Solomon is going to build the temple, And David did all the preparation. Okay. So think one, a father did all the preparation to set up his son well. Number one, think about that. And then number two, whenever he does commission him, he does give him his permission to go do it. He tells him, he says, my son, be strong and courageous and do the work. Like that is the direct quote, do the work and the Lord will be with you as long as you do it. Right. And I think that guys, we're okay with going to work. We're good at providing. We're okay with that. We know that comes kind of naturally. We're fixers. For the most part, not every guy's, over here wanting to cut grass or whatever. But there is this sense that if you're not doing the work, it ain't getting done. Right. And if you're not doing this work internally, where you are wrestling with yourself, wrestling with who you are, taking who you are to God, finding people in your life who can speak into who you need to be and who you would like to be, and helping you come up with some solutions for learning around that. If you're not doing that kind of work, I don't truly believe that you are living up to your calling of being the man of your house and being a man who serves the Lord. Right? I really don't think it's possible for us to embrace true masculinity without doing this type of work inside. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it all starts from within. For sure. I mean, we read all over scripture, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and strength. He didn't just say love God with your strength, right? And what does it look like to love the Lord with every part of your being, right? So it's all inclusive, if you ask me, but to do the work, I mean, that's our responsibility. And I love that because it connects with us on it connects with us as men, certainly, to put in the work. We love to work with our hands. We love to do that. But yeah, man, it's huge.
Yeah, we got to do the work, man. We got to. Like that means physically, that means you need to be in the gym. You need to do something. I mean, there's dudes on Instagram getting in shape cutting logs, go cut a log. Like,
yeah,
I never understood that, where like chicks are like, whoa, look at that guy cutting logs. I mean,
yeah,
no guy ever looks great cutting logs. I mean, you're just like, like it's hilarious. But I think physically we have to do the work, emotionally we have to do the work, and then spiritually we need to do the work too. We need to be serving the Lord and getting in there. I know that some people might be listening to this and not realizing, this is, I think, a big assumption that Mitch and I are making here is that the people listening are believers. They do have their core values. One of those core values is they love Jesus as their savior, and he's kind of setting the course for their life, where vulnerability should be a little bit easier because that step's already been taken in a sense, right? If we're coming strictly from people who are on Instagram and they're in the red pill nation and Sigma life and all this other stuff, and they're like, man, you can't be vulnerable to your chick, she'll never look at you the same again. Be like, well, you don't need to be around her anyway, right? There's like this whole alpha male thing, which I think is hilarious because one, alpha males are usually the strongest protectors of their families. You know what I mean? Like if you think of an alpha wolf, right? Like he's the most ferocious dad you ever met in your life, right? He's not just out there impregnating as many wolves as possible. That's not what being an alpha is. He literally has no family. He's not an alpha of anything. So in order to be an alpha, you have to have followers, right? So
totally.
I just think it's hilarious, like where this, you can really see the diverging line between the secular mind and the believer's mind when it really comes into this area. So I think we're making that assumption here. So
yeah, well, and I think what you're saying, as men, and in culture too, it's like it's all about the easy life, right? Like,
speak more to that.
Well, think about it, man. We weren't created. I mean, one of the first things the Lord did was gave us something to do. Adam, Genesis, right?
That's so funny. You missed that so much, man. Like it's true. He's like, hey, man, go take care of this stuff.
Go, he gave us dominion over the animals to work the land. He gave us a job. That's one of the very first things to do. And ever since then, like, you know what I mean? So life was never intended to be easy. Relationships were not intended to be easy. right? Marriage is not intended to make you happy. It's intended to make you holy, right? I mean, that's the whole point. And so life is not supposed to be easy, right? When you think about, right, and I talk to a lot of people my age and a bit younger. It's like they just expect, sorry, I'm going on rant here, but this
No,
culture of
rant, bro.
entitlement, right? It's like, well, I just deserve to have the body without the work. I deserve to have the marriage without the work. I deserve to have, the supermodel wife with the holding the Bible and, 3 kids and a 6-pack abs and, a Mercedes and a big house on a hill. Well, okay, nobody just hands you that. It's you have to do the work. And I love this idea of, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but we're talking about the concept of voluntary hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, since the beginning of time, we have to, like, we grow through voluntary hardship. Going to the gym, voluntary hardship. Delayed gratification, voluntary hardship. Marriage, voluntary hardship. Right? When you think about the mountain, everybody wants to be on the mountaintop, right? Everybody wants to live up there, and it's like, man, I'm gonna get it all. I'm gonna be up there. But when you're on the mountain, so I live right around the Rockies. So when you're on the mountaintop, you look around. What do you see? Nothing. Nothing is up there. You're above the tree line. Nothing can grow on the mountaintop. However, down in the valley,
Everything grows in the valley, baby.
that's where everything grows, man. It's lush, it's green, the river's flowing, the animals are down there. Life is mostly in the valley, and it's climbing up out of that valley. It's putting in the work. That's where, like, life happens, man. The hard stuff, the fighting, the sore muscles, the saying no to the happy meal, or whatever, or choosing to save money instead of buy the watch or whatever. It's saying no. It's putting in the work that gets you to the
Yep.
mountaintop, but you never intended to stay there. You get up there, you enjoy the view, you come back down, you grow a little bit more, you go back up, you enjoy the view, you come back down. And so I believe that just inside the church and outside the church, especially as men, we think one day this is going to be easy, right?
No, it never
One
gets
day
easier.
the work is going to be done, and I'm just going to chill on the beach. I'm going to
No, the
sip my
load just gets
margarita.
heavier.
Totally. And it doesn't. It's a great fallacy of man to think that one day the work will be done, and it won't. And that's because it's not supposed to. We're supposed to challenge ourselves. And then from that comes a rich, beautiful life, but it's not without putting in the work. So, yes, I 100% agree. Put in the work in every area and don't expect it to be easy, because anything easy is not worth having. Right.
Yeah, I think there's a great there was a book written by a psychologist named Scott Peck. It's called The Road Less Traveled, I believe, to go off of Robert Frost, two paths, the virginal wood,
Yeah.
the road less traveled. Um, and he talks about, now, don't, just so you know, believers, I think Scott Peck is definitely not a believer, so just be aware. Y'all gonna be like, he's gay. Okay, he is. It's okay, right? Doesn't mean what he says is wrong.
I've quoted a bunch of his stuff in my courses as well. So, hey, we're both in the same boat here.
Yeah, but he says once you embrace that life is hard, life ceases to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you just accept the fact that this is gonna be hard, somehow it just turns down the intensity. The fear of hardship usually amplifies the intensity, right? Of this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. But as soon as you settle into something and realize, hey, this isn't that difficult, like just going to the gym or having those hard conversations with your family or with your wife or with your boss or whoever it is, the fear is usually way worse than the actual doing of the thing, right?
Yep.
So I think that we do have a serious, to steal the title of Michael Easter's book, A Comfort Crisis, which that's a great book if you haven't read it. The Comfort Crisis.
It's on my
Great
list.
book. Huh? It's really good. It's such a guidebook because it's like he's taking you on his hunt he did out in Alaska. So it's very much a guidebook. But he goes into a lot of science about gratitude and about like thinking about your death and embracing, just embracing hardship. Dude,
Mm-hmm.
It kind of changed my life, even though I thought I was kind of tough already. But I'm like, dude, I
Mm-hmm.
need to, yeah, there's so many things I need to embrace,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that we are very much in a comfort crisis, and we have this delusion that things are supposed to be easy. But the problem is that the human physiology and psychology only expand under adversity,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
It
100%.
it can only expand under adversity because you only get better at what you do more often, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
sit on the couch more often, you will adapt to being on the couch much better and efficiently,
Yeah.
right? You will.
Yeah.
You will. If you run a lot, you get better at running. If
Mm-hmm.
you embrace hard conversations, you get better at embracing hard conversations, right? Like it's like you literally are an adaptation machine. So you need to, and it's always on. That switch is always on. It's never off. So as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you have to constantly steer the direction of your life towards the areas you want to adapt better in.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you will adapt in the things you don't want to be good at, right? You'll be better at
Absolutely.
being lazy. You'll be better at being a no-show dad. You'll be better at taking your wife for granted if you continue down that path. You simply just get more efficient at it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think Joe Rogan talks about this. A lot of guys are talking about this, where it's the struggle is where the life really is. So whatever you can do to make it a little harder, it's
Mm-hmm.
honestly probably going to
Well,
be better.
dude, absolutely. The second you stop expecting your wife to be perfect, your marriage is going to get a whole lot better,
Oh my
right?
God.
The second you stop expecting things to go easy, the easier your life is going to become. It's, I mean, it's, I think we all want to be on the beach with an umbrella drink, being alone is the dream of, isolated island. Um, but that's going to result in like diabetes and dementia, man. You can only
Yeah.
drink so many cocktails and be on a beach before you're going to lose your mind and
Yeah.
have
How long can
diabetes.
you
Like,
do that before you end up
yeah,
just taking your own life? I mean, like, you're just like,
yeah.
what on earth?
You have to challenge yourself, and dude, I've been talking about this so much with people lately. But I was sharing this on one of my, I think it was the second episode of my podcast. But um, I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to the brain. But neurologists have actually been able to prove how to grow your willpower. And there's a brain structure called your anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
Mhm.
And so, what this brain structure does is they've observed that when you do things that you don't want to do, this brain structure actually grows. And so, when they've observed the anterior mid-cingulate cortex in people like high-performing athletes, people who consistently challenge themselves and do things that are hard, this part of the brain structure is significantly larger than other people's. Now, the thing is, and they've also observed this brain structure in people who live sedentary lives, other like obese people, people that just don't necessarily, they don't push themselves, they don't do hard things. That brain structure is actually quite a bit smaller. And so, but the interesting thing about this brain structure is that if you are doing something that you don't enjoy doing something that's difficult, but then you begin to enjoy doing it, then that brain structure begins to shrink again. And so a common example is if you start going to the gym. So for your listeners, if you start eating well and go to the gym and you don't like it, it's hard. That anterior mid-cingulate cortex is going to grow. But then as you begin to enjoy it, then it starts to shrink again. And so neurologists have been discovering that this is actually the key to growing your willpower. This is where your willpower comes from, and
Mhm.
even like your will to live. So people who have overcome significant challenges in life and have overcome major illnesses and disease, this brain structure is larger. And so the only way to grow your willpower and have a stronger sense of determination is to do things that you don't want to do and to do things that are difficult. And this is how we establish a strong will. And they're actually, for the first time in history, they're able to kind of prove it from a neurological perspective. Isn't
That's
that crazy?
incredible. That's actually
Yeah.
incredible. Like, to think that there's a physical place inside your brain that
Mm-hmm.
responds to hardship, and it grows and shrinks based
Mm-hmm.
off use, right? Think
Mm-hmm.
about that. Like, right? Like that's just wacky, right?
And that's why the more you deny yourself, the harder the things you do, the stronger or easier life gets. A life doesn't get any easier. Your willpower is just grown, and so the challenges you face don't seem as difficult. It's just as hard. In fact, it's probably harder. It's just your mindset's changed now.
I love that's what I love about the gym, dude. I love the gym because the weight never judges. It never asks me if I had a good day. It
Yeah.
never asks me how I feel today. It never
Mm-hmm.
tells me my shorts look terrible or my outfit is not on point. It just is what it is. And it's there to help me or it's there to stop me. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if
Yeah.
I can go in there and I can just do one extra rep, I can put 2.5s on each side, then I won for that
Yeah.
day. You know what I mean? Like I love that. I love how cut and dry it is. I feel like guys who are maybe not as into it should try because I think almost everything spiritual that I've ever learned about growing, I learned from the gym. I feel
100%.
I feel like God has just used that place to teach me just how to be a man, how to be a better dad, how to be a husband, just how to embrace difficulty, how to embrace process and realize like it's just not going to come overnight, dude. I don't care. You want to bench 405? Good luck. See you in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're like, and guys are
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I can, that's why Instagram, that's why the comment section always just, I just have to stay out of the comments because dude, it's a war zone for one, but it's a war zone with people who don't know how to shoot guns. Right.
Mm.
It's just like, just because
Yeah.
you can comment doesn't mean you've earned the right to be heard. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like the gym is a really great place to start that process for a lot of guys because it's forgiving in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of ways, and you don't have to risk a lot of exposure um, or rejection because nobody knows what you're trying to do. Nobody knows. Like you're just doing your thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
and
there's no
I,
cheating it.
huh?
There's no cheating it,
Yeah, there's no
right?
cheating it,
Like
but
there's
there's
no
also
lying.
no failing it.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
You can't fail it. If you went in and you did a little bit more than you did last time, you won,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the margins for success are so easily attained. Like you're so easy to jump to the next success that it creates momentum. So a lot of people when they ask me like, where should I start? Should I start on my diet? Should I start training? I'm like, start training,
Mm-hmm.
right? Diet is going to be tied to your emotions way too
Mm-hmm.
much. Let's just start training. Let's get you some wins. Let's get you moving forward, embracing more difficult things, being okay with sweating. You'd be
Mm-hmm.
surprised how many people are just not okay with sweating,
Mm.
right? I'm like, that's a normal physiological process. Uh, you
It's
know,
a healthy thing,
yeah, like going to the bathroom. So I feel like if we can just start that, and that's where I'd like to encourage guys. We're going to start wrapping up here, but I just want to encourage guys like, hey man, find a way to start doing that work. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that feels most within reach for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's working on your diet, work on your diet. If it's going to the gym, man, start going to the gym. If you don't know what to do in the gym, talk to Mitch, talk to me, whoever. There's a million apps, right? Like there are literally no excuses other than you don't want it enough.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can admit that, then you're in a special place too. So
Well,
you
that's the
probably need to see a
thing.
counselor.
Yeah, man, that's that back to what I was saying at the beginning. You get what you need. You don't get what you want, you get what you need. And so if you haven't gotten the results you wanted, it's because you don't need them, right? It's still an option for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so a lot of men, I got friends who are very, very overweight. And they just don't want it bad enough, and unfortunately they're gonna have to hit, you know, a challenge, a
Mm-hmm.
medical crisis
Mm-hmm.
until they need to do it because they'll get what they need, but they won't necessarily always get what they want because they don't want it bad enough. And so you'll end up getting to the point where you need to do it. And that's we don't want to get there, right? But
You don't want to get there, no,
you don't
because
want to get there.
you want to change before you have to change, right? Because
Exactly.
sometimes when you change, when you when a crisis happens, there might not be any coming back from it.
Totally.
For instance, like one of my friends, he came over one day. I was working out in my garage. He walks over. He's one of my neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I don't know if he's a Christian. I never really pushed that subject with him. Not too hard because he would recoil. But we're very like as like in their neighborhood, we're very open, right? Like the garage is always open. I'm out there. working out, doing stuff. So he just walks over and he's like, "Hey man, I have a question. Uh, I went to the doctor and I said, well, why'd you go to the doctor? He said, well, my eyes were going blurry.
Mm.
And I was like, why are your eyes going blurry? He's like, he starts telling me some things. He's like, I've been real thirsty. Uh, I've been
Mm.
losing weight real fast. Like I can't get enough thirst. I'm like, dude, you're type 2 diabetic. You need to go to
Yeah.
the doctor immediately in the morning because you're gonna have you're gonna have diabetic neuropathy in,
Mm-hmm.
in your eyes and all kind of stuff, dude. Like you're gonna lose your vision. You're gonna die. And it took that. It took that. The dude had an A1C of 11,
Wow.
11, which is double what your blood sugar is supposed to be. So you're supposed to have about 4 grams of sugar, a little less than a teaspoon of sugar in your blood. He had 2 teaspoons of sugar in his blood. Um, and so he finally starts exercising, watching his diet, and look, dude, changes in 3 months. Like 3 months, his A1C is back to like 6 within normal range.
Mm-hmm.
But he could have died.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was that close.
Mm-hmm.
He was that close to having a heart attack, losing his vision, like all kind of complications. So you want to change before you have to, because there's no guarantee that once you finally start paying attention that you did it in enough time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, and then for the guys who are listening who are in leadership, for the guys who are listening who are in ministry,
Mm,
a strong man, a strong leader, a strong pastor has control over his life. A weak man doesn't have control, and that's uncomfortable to say, and it's uncomfortable to hear. But if you're being controlled by food, if you're being controlled by uh, procrastination or anything else in your life, if you're being controlled by your emotions, um, then you're not a master of your circumstance, your body, your mind, all that kind of stuff. And so I think a lot of men think, well, because I got a high paying job, then I am in control. That I'm great at what I do. Or
mm,
if I got a really great body, then I'm a strong man. Okay, well, if you got a really great body and you're like 200 grand in debt, or if you're in a leadership position but you're 80 pounds overweight, you're not a master, and there's something in your life that has control over
mm,
you. And strong men understand what they need to get a grasp of, and they have the understanding that they don't let things master them, right? In that sense. And so I just I think I see a lot of men in my life like that, and I talk with a lot of men like that. I'm like, there are things in your life that have control over you that you need to take back control of. And I think great strong men understand what has control over them and they address it, right? And so yeah, man, I'm totally with you on it. I think it's super important.
I love that, man. So on that note, Mitch, dude, you started Dad Nation recently, but dude, you've been blowing up. Can you tell people where to find you if they want to get more of your content? Some guys may be inspired to really
Mm.
start doing some work. Where can they find you, man?
Yeah, man. So you can find me at Dad Nation Co on Instagram. You can go to on the website. My website is dadnationco.com. And a lot of people ask, how can I work with you? How can I engage with you? And I keep it real simple, man. 3 C's. It's content, which is content, curriculum, and coaching, right? So content's like Instagram. It's the free stuff you see, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. The curriculum is I just got a ton of free resources that is totally free for you. Just go on the website, download them. I've got a free marriage course for people. It's called Remodel Your Marriage. Guys who maybe feel like their marriage could use a remodel or refreshing, or maybe it's on the rocks and they've lost touch with their spouse or whatever the case is. Real simple. I got tons of resources for them. Again, totally free. And there's other things that they can get as well. So curriculum, and then of course coaching, which the application window is closed right now, but you can get on the wait list to do. I do cohort coaching, which is groups of 12 men or more. I don't do more than 12 men because even Jesus himself only developed 12 men.
Dude, and one of them betrayed him, just so you know. I'm just kidding.
Right. And so cohort one-on-one coaching as well. And we break it down, man, all aspects of the life. Your family, which is your key relationships, your finances, obviously your fitness, which is all nutrition, exercise, focus, which of course is mindset, limiting self beliefs, insecurity, all that stuff. And then lastly, your future, which is a legacy planning, getting crystal clear on what you want and just making sense of where you want to go in life. And so those three things that I do, that's what I focus on. And so you can find me those two places, or just hit up Adam too. If you forget all this stuff, just text Adam and be like, hook me up with Mitch, man.
Yeah, for real.
So
just text me directly. Seriously. I'll answer.
I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to chat. If you're a husband, if you're a father, or if you're a man, you're just confused, or any of the things we've talked about, you just want help with, it's my passion, it's my joy to just walk with men and help them see just incredible results in their life, to transform their marriages, transform their relationships with their kids. I mean, it just means everything to me. So,
Mitch, thank you, man. I really appreciate it, dude. You're an inspiration. Just in the fact of how you've embraced the change and become a different person than who you were, which I think is rare and definitely admirable. So thank you, man, for doing it. Thank you for leading in this area. And thank you for having a heart, one, to follow Jesus, and then two, to help other guys learn how to be better men and hopefully follow Jesus. So, dude, you're the best, dude. Hopefully we can talk again soon, okay?
Absolutely. Would love to.
All right, brother. Blessings.
Goodbye.
Hey there, guys. I want to take a quick second to highlight a partner that we've been working with lately, Upgraded Formulas. You can see them at upgradedformulas.com. I have personally been taking their upgraded T formula to support natural testosterone production. I've noticed it after a few months. I've noticed I've had a bit more mental clarity. My rest is a little better, and I'm recovering a bit better from my workouts, which was actually surprising. So I'm able to exercise just a bit more. I love to exercise, so that's a bonus for me. Women can also take this because healthy testosterone levels in women help with fat loss, mental clarity, muscle gain, things like that. And also, the estrogen and testosterone go together hand in hand. If you support one, the other does pretty well as well. So definitely check them out. Also, they do something really great. I want to highlight a hair mineral analysis where you send them a little chunk of your hair, and they will let you know if you're deficient in anything or if you have too much of something like heavy metals in your system. So what this does is this is a great thing to help give you data on your health so that you can make decisions. None of this is a miracle cure. All of it is just information to help you make better decisions around your health and supplementation. All right, so really check them out. They're doing some really great quality. They're seeing some huge results, and I believe they're going to have some clinical studies coming out pretty soon. So check them out, upgradedformulas.com. Use the code ADAM10 to get a 10% discount today.